Meet Jenna and Ethan, a couple with a dream and a farmhouse full of challenges. As they struggle to rebuild their home and their lives, they uncover a buried family secret and face mounting pressure from all sides. With Jenna pursuing her passion for art and Ethan fighting to protect their future, each new trial pushes them to question if love alone is enough to see them through. Will their resilience carry them forward, or will the weight of their challenges prove too much? Don't forget to subscribe to follow their journey, and let us know in the comments. Can love truly conquer all? Let's dive in. Jenna Sanders woke early each morning to the soft sounds of birds outside her bedroom window. She took in the familiar, quiet world around her, a far cry from the life she dreamed about. The small town of Willow Creek, with its worn-down buildings and sleepy pace, had been her home for all of her 25 years. Her mother, Nancy, worked tirelessly as a waitress in a local diner, scraping together enough to pay the bills, but little more. They lived in a modest cottage on the edge of town, with creaking floors, peeling wallpaper, and a garden where wildflowers grew freely, almost defiantly, through cracks in the stone path. Today, Jenna had something special planned. She slung a paint-spattered canvas bag over her shoulder, tossed in a sketchbook, and grabbed her favorite pencil. She was heading to the old bridge outside town, a place she had loved since she was a child, when her father would take her there to fish before he left without a word. Now, it was her refuge, the only place she could escape the weight of responsibilities and expectations. As she made her way down the dirt path that led to the bridge, she felt her heart lighten, each step bringing her closer to the one place she could truly breathe. The bridge stretched over a narrow river, its planks worn smooth from decades of footsteps. The river flowed softly below, mirroring the orange hues of the setting sun. Jenna sat on the bridge railing, her feet dangling above the water as she pulled out her sketchbook. She often came here to draw the river, the wildflowers, the twisted trees that lined the banks. She wanted to capture everything about this place on paper, as if by drawing it she could keep a piece of it with her forever. As she sketched, she heard the soft crunch of footsteps behind her. She glanced over her shoulder and froze. A man was walking toward her, a camera slung around his neck, his eyes scanning the landscape as if he, too, was searching for something. He looked like he was in his early 30s, tall with dark hair that caught the light, his gaze thoughtful and intense. "Hi," he said when he noticed her staring, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Jenna blinked, a little caught off guard by his easy demeanor. She offered a small smile in return. "It's okay. I just wasn't expecting anyone else out here." He nodded, stepping closer and resting his hands on the bridge railing beside her. "It's a peaceful spot. Perfect for while thinking, I guess." Jenna couldn't help but laugh softly. "You're right about that. It's why I come here, too." They lapsed into a comfortable silence, both of them looking out over the water. Eventually, she asked, "What are you doing out here with a camera?" He lifted his camera, studying the viewfinder for a moment before turning to her. "I'm a photographer. Or at least, that's what I wish I was. Right now, I'm more of a guy with a camera who's trying to figure things out." Jenna nodded, understanding all too well what he meant. She'd dreamed of being an artist her whole life, but her responsibilities at home had kept her from pursuing it seriously. "I know the feeling," she replied. "I want to be a painter. But life, well, life has a way of keeping dreams at arm's length." He looked at her with a flicker of sympathy. "I get that. I'm Ethan, by the way." "Jenna." They shook hands, and the moment felt significant, like the beginning of something neither of them could yet define. Ethan Carmichael didn't know what had drawn him back to that bridge the next day, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was supposed to be there. He had grown up in the wealthy Carmichael family, one of the most powerful names in Willow Creek and the neighboring city. His family's construction business was a multi-million-dollar enterprise that his mother, Vivian, ran with an iron will. His life was meant to follow a strict path: business school, work at the family company, and eventually stepping into his mother's role to carry on the Carmichael legacy. But none of it felt right. He'd loved photography since he was a teenager, captivated by the way a single shot could capture an entire story. But Vivian had dismissed it as a hobby, something frivolous and distracting. His career had already been mapped out, and it didn't include anything that wouldn't directly contribute to the family fortune. When Ethan returned to the bridge, he felt a thrill of relief to see Jenna there again, sitting with her sketchbook in hand, her expression soft and intent as she drew the riverbank. She looked up when she heard him approaching, her eyes lighting up in recognition. "Back again?" she asked, a teasing note in her voice. Ethan chuckled, resting his camera against his chest. "You too." They talked for hours, sharing their dreams, frustrations, and the things they kept hidden from the people closest to them. Ethan told her about his family, about the expectations that weighed him down, and Jenna shared her struggles to make ends meet, how she felt trapped in Willow Creek. Their lives couldn't have been more different, but they both carried the same longing for freedom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a connection to Jenna that defied the barriers of their different worlds. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he wanted to see her again. Over the next month, Ethan and Jenna continued meeting at the bridge, their conversations growing more personal, more intimate. Their connection deepened with each passing day, both of them drawn to each other like magnets. Ethan found himself looking forward to these stolen moments, where he could set aside his family name and just be himself. Jenna, too, felt the pull of something new and exhilarating, something she had never experienced before. One evening, Ethan brought a small picnic to share. They sat on the bridge, the sun setting behind them, casting a golden glow over the landscape. They laughed and talked, their voices carrying over the water, and as the night grew darker, Ethan found himself unable to hold back any longer. "Jenna," he said softly, reaching for her hand, "I don't know what it is about you, but I haven't felt this alive in years. I know our lives are different, but I think, I know, I want to be with you." Jenna's heart raced, but there was a hint of fear in her eyes. She wanted to believe that they could make this work, but she couldn't ignore the chasm between their lives. She was the daughter of a single mother, scraping by to make a living, while he was part of a family that owned half the city. "Ethan, I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone. But what about your family? They'd never accept me. I'm just me." Ethan held her gaze, his expression steady. "I don't care what they think. I'm tired of living for other people's expectations. I want a life that's mine, with someone who truly understands me." For the first time, Jenna allowed herself to believe it might be possible. She squeezed his hand, feeling a spark of hope. "Then let's try. Let's make it ours." Vivian Carmichael had noticed the change in Ethan almost immediately. He was spending less time at the office, missing family dinners, and becoming more secretive. She prided herself on her perceptiveness and soon discovered that her son was seeing someone Vivian didn't approve of. With a little investigating, she learned Jenna's background and was appalled by the contrast to their family's wealth and influence. In her mind, Ethan's choice of a partner would reflect the Carmichael family, and Jenna simply didn't measure up. Determined to put a stop to their budding relationship, Vivian called Melissa Lawson, the daughter of a close family friend. Melissa had known Ethan since childhood and had always harbored feelings for him. She was perfect, someone Vivian had quietly hoped would eventually become Ethan's wife. Melissa agreed to help, seeing this as her chance to finally win Ethan's heart. Together, she and Vivian concocted a plan to subtly steer Ethan away from Jenna. Melissa arranged to meet Ethan for coffee, choosing an upscale cafe where they used to go as kids. She greeted him warmly, all too aware of how he glanced at his phone, no doubt hoping for a message from Jenna. "Ethan, it's been too long," Melissa said, leaning forward with a practiced smile. "We hardly see you anymore. Busy with the family business." Ethan shrugged, clearly uninterested in discussing his responsibilities. "I've just been exploring a few things, trying to figure out what I want." Melissa's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Well, just remember, Ethan, we all have a role to play. The Carmichael name carries a lot of weight. And your future, it's a big responsibility. Not everyone is ready for it." Ethan knew what she was implying and felt a spark of irritation. "Melissa, I know what my responsibilities are, but I also know I want more than just a life dictated by other people's expectations." Melissa's smile became tighter. "I understand, Ethan. Just think about it. Your family needs someone who can stand by you, who knows your world. He left the cafe more determined than ever to pursue a life that was truly his, with Jenna by his side. Ethan couldn't wait any longer. He decided to propose, knowing the obstacles they'd face, but believing their love was strong enough to withstand anything. He brought Jenna to the bridge at sunset, their favorite spot, and as they watched the sun sink below the horizon, he took her hand. "Jenna, this place, it brought us together, and I want us to be together always. I know my family won't make it easy, but I don't care. Will you marry me?" Jenna's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the simple ring he held. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but in this moment, none of it mattered. She nodded, her heart racing, and whispered, "Yes." They sealed their promise with a kiss, both of them filled with a mixture of joy and apprehension for the life that awaited them. As they began planning a small, intimate wedding, Jenna's mother, Nancy, decided to give them the only family treasure they had, the deed to an old farmhouse. It wasn't a mansion, but it was filled with love and memories. Nancy presented it to them with a bittersweet smile at their modest reception. "This house has been in our family for generations," she said. "It's not much, but it's home. I want it to be yours." Vivian, who had reluctantly attended, watched with an icy smile. She turned to Melissa and muttered, "A farmhouse? That's hardly a fitting home for a Carmichael." Melissa smirked, her eyes lingering on Jenna. "I doubt she has any idea what she's getting into." Ethan and Jenna's engagement sparked a mix of emotions. For Jenna, it was a dream come true, though overshadowed by the tension she sensed from Ethan's family. She had hoped for a moment of celebration with Vivian's approval, yet all she'd received was icy politeness. But Jenna tried to focus on the love she and Ethan shared and the life they planned to build together. Ethan, on the other hand, remained determined. He had made his choice, and no amount of disapproval from his family could sway him. Jenna had become his anchor, his source of peace, and he wanted to give her the life she deserved. Despite his mother's silence and lack of interest in their wedding, Ethan and Jenna set a date. They planned a simple, intimate ceremony close to the heart of Willow Creek, where they could be surrounded by the people who loved them. Nancy offered her modest home for a small reception afterward, a place filled with memories and warmth. Jenna spent countless evenings with her mother, poring over small wedding details, finding secondhand decorations, fixing up her mother's old dress, and making lists of the close friends and family they wanted to invite. Nancy's excitement helped Jenna keep her doubts at bay. Her mother's unwavering support reminded her that love and loyalty were more valuable than the approval of anyone else. As the wedding plans progressed, Vivian felt the growing wedge between her and Ethan. For her, his decision to marry Jenna was more than just a poor choice. It was a direct affront to the Carmichael name. To Vivian, Jenna represented everything she'd tried to shield Ethan from: struggle, poverty, a lack of status. She saw her son's decision as a reckless departure from the legacy she'd spent her life preserving. One afternoon, Vivian sat in her office, staring out the tall windows overlooking the city. The Carmichael name had been built on wealth and influence. She had upheld this tradition by making carefully chosen alliances and networking with people who mattered. Vivian worried that Jenna's entrance into the family would jeopardize it all. Vivian decided she couldn't stand by idly. She contacted Melissa and invited her over for tea, intending to discuss a way to stop the wedding. Melissa arrived at the Carmichael mansion in the late afternoon, dressed elegantly as always, her demeanor confident and controlled. She'd always harbored feelings for Ethan, though she had learned to bury them over time, assuming he would eventually choose someone his family approved of. Yet, Ethan's engagement to Jenna had reignited those old feelings, and she found herself unwilling to let go completely. They sipped tea in the grand sitting room, the walls adorned with oil portraits of Carmichael ancestors. Vivian broke the silence with a calculated tone. "Melissa," she began, "I can't express how disappointed I am with Ethan's choice. This girl, she's not suitable for him, nor for the responsibilities he'll inherit." Melissa set her cup down, her eyes steady on Vivian. "I know, Vivian, but Ethan, he's always been strong-willed. I'm not sure he'll listen to anyone." Vivian leaned forward. "He's in a vulnerable place right now. He thinks Jenna offers him freedom, a way to escape his obligations. But that's an illusion. I need someone he trusts to help him see the reality. Melissa nodded thoughtfully, recognizing the opportunity to win Ethan's affection if she could somehow get him to question his choice. She agreed to subtly reach out to Ethan and share her concerns about his engagement, hoping to sow doubt. Melissa reached out to Ethan, suggesting they meet for coffee to catch up. She took him to an elegant, upscale cafe where they had shared countless afternoons during their childhood. For a moment, the familiarity of the place put Ethan at ease, though he sensed a hint of tension. They made small talk, but Melissa soon shifted the conversation toward his engagement. She leaned in, her tone soft and compassionate. "Ethan, I just want to make sure you've really thought this through. I know Jenna is important to you, but marriage is, well, it's a lifetime commitment." Ethan's brow furrowed, caught off guard. "Melissa, I've never been sure of anything. I love Jenna. She's everything I've ever wanted." Melissa gave him a small, almost pitying smile. "I know you feel that way now, but love isn't always enough. Jenna, she comes from a different world, one that doesn't know the pressures or expectations we have. What happens when that difference becomes too much?" Ethan felt a flicker of irritation. "Melissa, I know who Jenna is, and I love her exactly as she is. I've spent too long living for another people's approval. This is my choice." Melissa nodded, her expression unreadable. She could see that Ethan's resolve was strong, but she wasn't ready to give up. After all, Vivian had made it clear that she wouldn't accept Jenna, and Melissa had always believed that Ethan would eventually see reason. Despite Vivian's disapproval, Nancy and Jenna planned a modest engagement party at the cottage. Jenna was thrilled, her heart full as she decorated the house with flowers and fairy lights. For her, this was a chance to show Ethan's family the life she and her mother had built together, modest but filled with love and resilience. Vivian arrived at the party with a strained smile, her posture stiff as she surveyed the humble decorations and the modest fare. She remained polite but distant, avoiding conversation with Nancy and Jenna. She kept to herself, her disapproval quietly evident. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed Jenna's tense smile and the way her eyes kept drifting toward his mother, as if hoping for some sign of approval. He pulled Jenna aside, his expression filled with empathy. "Don't worry about her," he whispered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I love you, Jenna. That's all that matters." Jenna nodded, but Vivian's cold presence lingered in the back of her mind, casting a shadow over what should have been a joyful occasion. After the engagement party, Nancy asked Ethan and Jenna to stay a while longer, pulling out a small, weathered envelope. Inside were the keys and deed to the old farmhouse that had belonged to Jenna's grandparents. "This place isn't much," Nancy began, her voice trembling slightly, "but it's filled with memories. Your grandparents built their life there, and I hoped you and Ethan could do the same." Jenna's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the keys, moved by her mother's gesture. She knew how hard her mother had worked to keep the farmhouse despite financial struggles, and this gift felt like a blessing and a responsibility. Ethan hugged Nancy, grateful for the kindness and love Jenna's family had shown him. But as he looked at Jenna, he could see the unspoken worry in her eyes, the sense that they were stepping into a world of challenges that his family would never fully understand. When Ethan returned to the city, he met his mother for lunch at her request. They sat in a private room of an upscale restaurant, the sound of silverware and soft murmurs creating an atmosphere of formality. "Ethan," Vivian began, her voice measured and serious, "I need to know that you've thought through this decision. Marriage is more than a feeling. It's a partnership that reflects on our family." Ethan set his fork down, his gaze steady. "I've thought it through, Mom. I love Jenna. She's good for me. She makes me a better person." Vivian's mouth tightened. "But she's not one of us. She doesn't understand the demands you'll face. Do you really think she'll be able to stand by you when the pressures mount?" Ethan clenched his jaw, trying to keep his composure. "Maybe that's what I want. Someone who's honest. Someone who doesn't care about money or status. I'm not interested in living my life by other people's expectations anymore." Vivian sighed, her expression hardening. "I hope you realize the consequences of this choice. The world Jenna comes from, it's not the world we live in. I just hope you're prepared." Ethan left the restaurant feeling both defiant and heartbroken. He knew he was choosing Jenna, but he couldn't help but feel the weight of his mother's disapproval pressing down on him. As the wedding day approached, Jenna felt the pressure intensify. She sensed Vivian's silent judgment, the feeling that she would never truly belong in Ethan's world. Every time she went to the city with Ethan, she saw the difference in status and privilege, felt the eyes of strangers as they looked her up and down, assessing, measuring her against some unseen standard. One afternoon, while shopping for wedding decorations in the city, Jenna caught sight of herself in a shop window. She wore her favorite blue dress, simple and well-loved, but it felt out of place among the sophisticated fashions around her. She couldn't help but compare herself to the women in the city, with their perfect hair, designer clothes, and air of confidence. When she returned home, she confided her insecurities to Nancy, who listened with quiet understanding. "Jenna," Nancy said, taking her daughter's hand, "you are more than enough. You don't need fancy clothes or titles to be worthy of love. Ethan chose you for who you are, and that's something money can't buy." Jenna nodded, trying to absorb her mother's words, but the fear lingered. She wanted to believe that love would be enough, but Vivian's disapproval loomed, casting a shadow over her happiness. A week before the wedding, Melissa made one last attempt to sway Ethan, arranging a meeting under the guise of discussing old memories. They met at a cafe, and as they reminisced about their childhood, Melissa's true intentions became clear. "Ethan, I just want you to know, I'll always be here for you. I know the pressures you're under, and I can help you carry them. You deserve someone who understands your world, who can support you in ways others can't." Ethan's face tightened. "Melissa, I appreciate everything you're saying, but I don't need someone from my world. I need someone who understands me." "That's Jenna." Melissa's smile faded, and for the first time, she realized that Ethan's mind was made up. She left with a heavy heart, finally accepting that she had lost him. The day of the wedding arrived with a mix of joy and tension. Jenna wore her mother's old wedding dress, and as she looked at her reflection, she felt a quiet sense of peace. Ethan was waiting for her, and for a moment, all her fears melted away. The ceremony was simple and beautiful, held under a grove of trees near Willow Creek. Jenna and Ethan exchanged vows with heartfelt promises, and when they kissed, it felt as though the world fell away, leaving only the two of them. As they walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, Jenna felt a surge of hope. She and Ethan were building a life together, a life of their own, regardless of the challenges that lay ahead. Following their wedding, Jenna and Ethan moved into the farmhouse Nancy had gifted them. As they crossed the threshold together, Jenna felt a sense of nostalgia mixed with a tinge of apprehension. The farmhouse was filled with family memories, but the years had not been kind to it. The faded walls, creaking floors, and worn furnishings gave the house a sense of neglect. Ethan took Jenna's hand and looked around with a determined smile. "We'll make it ours, Jenna, bit by bit, just like we planned." Jenna nodded, squeezing his hand, trying to share his optimism. She wanted to believe they could turn this place into a sanctuary, a home filled with love and laughter. But as she looked around at the peeling wallpaper, the dripping kitchen sink, and the cracked windows, she knew they had a long road ahead. In the following weeks, Jenna and Ethan poured all their energy into fixing up the farmhouse. They painted the walls, scrubbed the floors, and cleared out decades of dust. They tackled each task with enthusiasm, but their excitement quickly faded as the list of repairs grew longer. Ethan, who had grown up in the Carmichael mansion with every luxury at his disposal, found himself learning to repair leaks, clear gutters, and patch up broken furniture. Jenna did her best to stay optimistic, channeling her creativity into designing small corners of their home that could feel cozy and warm. However, as the bills began to pile up, reality set in. The farmhouse needed more work than they'd anticipated, and their modest savings were dwindling fast. The dream of restoring it completely seemed more distant with every expense. One night, as they sat on the floor of their barely furnished living room, sharing a simple meal, Jenna turned to Ethan, her voice tinged with worry. "Are we going to make it, Ethan? I didn't expect it to be this overwhelming." Ethan reached for her hand, offering a comforting smile. "We'll make it, Jenna. We might not have everything right away, but we'll have each other. And that's enough. Though his words reassured her, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that had begun to settle in her heart. Jenna decided to look for a job in the city to help support their finances, hopeful she could find something that would allow her to use her creative skills. She pored over job listings, applied for positions, and attended interviews, but each one ended in disappointment. Her lack of formal training and the competition from others with more polished resumes left her discouraged. Ethan, too, faced obstacles. His passion for photography hadn't yet translated into a stable income. He had assumed he could make a career out of his art, but the industry was more competitive than he had imagined, and he struggled to find work. He refused to turn to his family for support, wanting to prove to himself and to his mother that he could make it on his own. The financial strain added a new tension between them. Jenna wanted to support him, but each rejected application felt like another blow. Ethan grew quieter, bottling up his frustration to avoid burdening Jenna further. The silence between them grew until one day, when Jenna opened the door to find Vivian standing on the porch, her expression unreadable. Jenna's heart raced. She hadn't expected Vivian to visit their home, and certainly not unannounced. "Hello, Jenna," Vivian said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She looked around, taking in the state of the house. "I thought I'd see how my son is doing." Jenna forced a smile, trying to keep her composure. "Ethan's out running errands, but you're welcome to wait." Vivian sat in the small living room, her gaze scanning the peeling paint and patched-up walls. Her silence was heavy, as if she were mentally cataloging everything that fell short of her standards. After a few minutes, Vivian spoke. "Jenna, I know you and Ethan are trying to make this work, but you must realize how different this life is from what he's used to." Jenna braced herself, knowing this was coming. "I understand that, Vivian, but Ethan and I are building something together, something real. We don't need luxury. We just need each other." Vivian's mouth tightened. "Romantic ideals only last so long, Jenna, and love doesn't pay bills. This house," she gestured around the room, "is not suitable for him. I want to help." Jenna felt a pang of resentment, knowing that help from Vivian came with strings. "Thank you, but Ethan and I can manage. We'll make this house a home, one step at a time." Vivian's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Very well, but my offer stands. If you change your mind for his sake, you know where to find me." Jenna watched as Vivian left, her words echoing in her mind. She knew Vivian's offer was more about control than generosity, but part of her couldn't help wondering if she was holding Ethan back from the life he deserved. Not long after Vivian's visit, Melissa reached out to Ethan, inviting him to meet for coffee. Jenna didn't mind, trusting that Ethan was loyal, but she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. Melissa greeted Ethan warmly, her appearance as polished as ever. She asked about his photography, his new life at the farmhouse, and their renovations. Ethan sensed a hint of condescension in her questions, though her tone remained friendly. "You know, Ethan," she began, stirring her coffee, "it's admirable what you're doing out there with Jenna. But don't you miss the comforts of home? I mean, I've known you forever. You're not exactly cut out for farm life." Ethan chuckled, though her words stung. "Melissa, I appreciate your concern, but I'm happy. Really, Jenna and I are working hard, and it's rewarding." Melissa sighed, a look of pity crossing her face. "If you say so. Just remember, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, and you don't have to stay in a life that doesn't fit you." Though Ethan brushed off her comments, her words lingered in his mind, fueling his doubts. He wanted to believe he was strong enough to handle this new life, but Melissa's insinuation that he was out of place hit close to home. As the days passed, Jenna felt the weight of Ethan's silence. She saw him looking out the window, lost in thought, his camera untouched. She worried that Melissa's words were affecting him, and that perhaps Vivian's visit had stirred doubts in his mind. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Jenna found the courage to speak up. "Ethan, are you happy here? I mean, I know this life isn't easy, and I wonder if I'm holding you back from the things you want." Ethan looked up surprised. "Jenny, no. I chose this life with you. I know it's hard, but we'll get through it." She nodded, though the doubts still lingered. The pressures of their new life and the disapproval of Ethan's family felt like shadows creeping into their home, casting a pall over the love they had once felt so secure in. As the strain of their financial burdens grew, Jenna received devastating news. Her mother, Nancy, had been experiencing severe health issues and would need surgery. The medical bills were overwhelming, far beyond what they could afford, and Jenna's world seemed to crumble. Jenna sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand. Nancy smiled weakly, her voice a whisper. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I've lived a full life. You focus on building your own." But Jenna refused to give up. She returned home, desperate to find a way to raise the money for her mother's surgery. Ethan suggested they apply for loans or seek help from community resources, but every option seemed to come up short. Jenna's sense of helplessness grew with each passing day, the weight of her mother's health crisis pressing down on her. She spent nights awake, silently weeping, afraid to show Ethan the depth of her despair. While working on the farmhouse one rainy afternoon, Ethan noticed something unusual in the corner of the basement. A loose stone in the wall caught his eye, and curiosity compelled him to pry it open. Behind it, he discovered a small metal box, covered in dust and cobwebs. Inside, he found a collection of old jewelry and a few faded bills, items that had clearly been hidden away for decades. Ethan's heart raced as he realized the potential value of what he'd uncovered. If sold, the jewelry might cover Nancy's medical expenses and help with the farmhouse repairs. He showed the box to Jenna, who was initially overjoyed. But as she examined the jewelry, she noticed an engraving on one of the pieces that looked familiar. A memory surfaced, a news article she had read years ago about a stolen heirloom from a wealthy family in the area. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. I think these might be stolen. We can't use them." Ethan felt a pang of frustration. "Jenna, this could save your mother's life. We could do so much good with this money." But Jenna shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "It doesn't belong to us. We'd be building our future on something dishonest." "I can't do that, Ethan." After a long silence, Ethan nodded, reluctantly agreeing. He knew Jenna was right, but the decision left them feeling even more vulnerable. The next day, Jenna and Ethan brought the box to the local police station, explaining how they had found it. The officer took their statement, promising to look into the origins of the jewelry and update them if anything was discovered. As they left the station, Jenna felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. They had done the right thing, but it meant facing an uncertain future without the financial help they had so desperately needed. Ethan held her close as they walked home, his mind racing with thoughts of what they would do next. He admired Jenna's integrity, but felt a nagging worry that their moral choice had cost them more than they could afford. In the days following their decision, Jenna and Ethan returned to their quiet life, working on the farmhouse and struggling to make ends meet. But the strain between them grew. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their self-imposed hardship was unnecessary, and Jenna, though resolute, felt a pang of guilt for turning away what might have saved her mother. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Jenna turned to Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you ever wonder if we made a mistake? If we were wrong to give it up?" Ethan paused, then shook his head slowly. "No, Jenna. We did what was right, and I believe that someday, somehow, it'll all come back to us." They sat in silence, holding each other close, as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, hoping that their choice would eventually lead them to peace. Days after turning in the hidden jewelry, Jenna and Ethan returned to their life of rigorous, everyday demands. Bills continued to pile up, and with Nancy's health deteriorating, they felt the need to find solutions growing ever more urgent. Ethan took on odd jobs, helping out wherever he could around town, from repairing fences to mowing lawns, each day bringing home just enough to cover the basics. Jenna, meanwhile, redoubled her efforts to find work in the city, often enduring long commutes for temporary jobs that barely paid minimum wage. She felt the quiet humiliation of rejection after rejection, but remained determined, motivated by her need to help with her mother's medical bills and her commitment to support Ethan's dreams. Each night, they returned home to the farmhouse, exhausted and weighed down, but unwilling to voice the concerns they feared would only further burden the other. One evening, after yet another rejected job application, Jenna broke down. She sat on the edge of their bed, her face buried in her hands. Ethan knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her tightly. "I feel like I'm failing, Ethan," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "I can't help you. I can't help Mom. It's like no matter what we do, it'll never be enough." Ethan lifted her chin, looking into her eyes with unwavering sincerity. "Jenna, you're not failing anyone. We're in this together. We're both doing the best we can." Despite Ethan's reassurances, Jenna couldn't shake her sense of inadequacy. The reality of their situation weighed heavily on her, casting shadows on the dreams they'd once shared. The next day, while Ethan was out working, Jenna received a surprise visit. She opened the door to find Vivian standing on the front steps, impeccably dressed, her gaze sharp and critical as it swept over the humble farmhouse. "May I come in?" Vivian asked, though it sounded more like a statement than a request. Jenna nodded, stepping aside as Vivian entered the small living room. Once inside, Vivian wasted no time getting to the point. She sat down, crossing her legs elegantly, and fixed Jenna with a piercing stare. "Jenna," she began, her voice smooth. With that, Vivian left, leaving Jenna standing in the middle of the living room, her heart heavy with resentment and fear. She knew Vivian's offer was born out of a twisted sense of protection, but it only served to deepen Jenna's insecurities. As she closed the door, she couldn't help but wonder if Vivian was right. That maybe, just maybe, she was holding Ethan back. Vivian's visit haunted Jenna, the words replaying in her mind like an unshakable echo. She tried to brush it off, to remind herself of Ethan's devotion, but a small part of her couldn't forget Vivian's pointed question. "Are you really giving him the life he deserves?" Each day, the farmhouse felt smaller, the tasks harder. Jenna began pulling away, spending more time alone, afraid to confide her fears to Ethan. She worried that sharing her doubts would make them more real, and she couldn't bear the thought of adding to his burdens. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed the shift in her behavior. He tried to reach out, to draw her back in, but her answers became shorter, her smiles rarer. The closeness they had once shared was being replaced by a silence neither could explain. A few weeks later, Ethan and Jenna celebrated their one-year anniversary. Determined to make the day special, Ethan surprised Jenna by cooking a simple dinner, setting the table with candles and a bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered himself. As they sat down to eat, Ethan lifted his glass, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "To us," he said softly, "to all the challenges we've faced and the dreams we still have." Jenna forced a smile, raising her glass to his, but the weight of Vivian's words hung heavy in her heart. The anniversary dinner, meant to be a celebration, felt more like a reminder of all the hardships they had endured, and her gratitude was tinged with guilt. After dinner, Ethan took her hand, leading her to the porch where they could watch the stars. They sat in silence for a while, Ethan's arm wrapped around her shoulders. "Jenna, I know things have been hard," he murmured, "but I wouldn't change a thing. I chose this life because I wanted it with you." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "But are you happy, Ethan? I mean, really happy?" He hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Of course I am. We're building something real, Jenna. Isn't that worth a little struggle?" Jenna nodded, but the doubt lingered. She wished she could share his confidence, but part of her couldn't help wondering if Vivian was right, that maybe she was denying him a life he deserved. The tension between them continued to simmer until one evening, it finally came to a head. Ethan returned home late after a long day of work, exhausted and frustrated. Jenna had spent the day caring for her mother, who had been in and out of the hospital, and her own exhaustion was beginning to show. As soon as Ethan walked in the door, Jenna turned to him, her face drawn and weary. "Ethan, we need to talk." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Can it wait, Jenna? It's been a long day." Jenna shook her head, her voice growing tense. "No, it can't. I'm tired too, Ethan. Tired of struggling, of feeling like we're on the edge of falling apart every day. Maybe this isn't the life we're supposed to be living." Ethan looked at her, stunned. "What are you saying, Jenna? Are you giving up?" She hesitated, tears filling her eyes. I don't know. I just, I don't know if we're meant to live like this. Your mother offered to help. She offered to pay for Mom's surgery. And I turned her down because I didn't want to lose you. But now, I feel like I've just made things harder for us. Ethan's face tightened. Jenna, that's exactly why I love you, because you didn't take the easy way out. You chose to build something with me, even if it's hard. But what if it's too hard? Jenna's voice broke, her emotions spilling over. What if I'm holding you back from a life you could actually enjoy? Ethan took a step back, hurt flashing in his eyes. Jenna, I'm here because I want to be. If you can't believe in that, then maybe we need to take a step back and remember why we started this. They stood in silence, the weight of their words settling between them like a barrier. Jenna's shoulders slumped, her heart aching with the realization that their love alone might not be enough to hold them together. After their argument, Jenna and Ethan withdrew to separate corners of the house, each wrestling with their own doubts. Jenna found herself questioning every choice she had made, every dream she had once believed in. She remembered the bridge where they had first met, where they had promised to build a life together, and wondered if that promise had been too idealistic to survive the real world. Ethan, too, felt the strain of their struggle weighing on him. He knew he loved Jenna deeply, but he couldn't ignore the growing resentment that he was unable to provide her with the life she deserved. For the first time, he wondered if his decision to abandon the family business had been selfish, if he had inadvertently dragged Jenna into a life she hadn't asked for. As dawn broke, they found themselves drawn back to each other, standing in the small kitchen where they had shared so many quiet mornings. Jenna took a deep breath, her voice soft but determined. Ethan, I know I've been distant. I know I've let my fears come between us, but I want to believe in us again. I want to find a way to make this work. Ethan nodded, reaching for her hand. And I'm willing to fight for that. Whatever it takes, Jenna, we're stronger together, but we need to remember why we chose this life. They embraced, both of them filled with a renewed determination. They knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time in months, they felt a spark of hope. Together, they would find a way to face the challenges and reclaim the dreams they had once shared. Determined to start anew, Jenna and Ethan decided to refocus their energies on the farmhouse. They created a plan to repair it bit by bit, prioritizing the rooms that were most in need of attention. Jenna decided to revive her passion for art, using her skills to create small paintings that she could sell at the local market, while Ethan committed himself to finding steady work in photography. They worked side by side, restoring the house and renewing their sense of purpose. Each small success brought a renewed sense of hope, each completed task a reminder that they could build something beautiful together. As they watched the sun set over the farmhouse one evening, Jenna took Ethan's hand, her heart full. No matter how hard it gets, I'm grateful for this life. For us. Ethan kissed her forehead, holding her close. We'll make it, Jenna, one step at a time. After Jenna and Ethan's commitment to renew their dreams together, Jenna poured herself into her art. She spent hours in the small, drafty shed at the back of the farmhouse, painting pieces inspired by the land around her. The creek, the wildflowers, the fields. She decided to sell her work at the weekend market in town, hoping to bring in some income and regain a sense of purpose. The first weekend was slow, and she returned home with only a few dollars. But as the weeks passed, Jenna's paintings began to draw attention. Her depictions of rural life, with their vibrant colors and emotional depth, resonated with the townspeople. She became a familiar face at the market, and her earnings, though modest, provided a glimmer of hope for their financial situation. Ethan watched her with pride, inspired by her determination. Jenna's art became a symbol of their resilience, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose in supporting her dreams. Each sale brought them closer, both emotionally and financially, and the farmhouse began to feel more like a home. Just as Jenna and Ethan began to find their footing, a new blow struck. Nancy's health took a sudden turn for the worse, and the doctors informed Jenna that her mother's surgery could no longer be delayed. The news left Jenna devastated, her heart torn between her love for Ethan and her duty to her mother. They scraped together their savings, hoping to cover as much of the costs as they could. Jenna redoubled her efforts to sell her paintings, but the expenses were overwhelming, and the money was running out faster than they could replace it. One evening, as Jenna sat by her mother's hospital bed, Nancy reached out, her hand frail but steady. "Jenna, you've always been so strong," Nancy whispered, her eyes full of love. "You and Ethan have a beautiful life ahead of you. Don't let my situation hold you back." But Jenna couldn't imagine letting her mother face this alone. She felt a surge of guilt at the thought of being unable to give her mother the care she deserved. She returned home that night, her mind heavy with worry, the fear of losing her mother overshadowing every joy she had found with Ethan. While Jenna focused on her mother's care, Ethan struggled to make ends meet. Desperate, he accepted a few freelance jobs through his mother's old contacts, hoping the work would be enough to bridge the financial gap. But it wasn't long before he realized that the jobs came with expectations, demands to work with clients who wanted high-end services that required more time and resources than he could afford. One afternoon, Ethan was approached by an old associate from his mother's social circle, who offered him a lucrative job opportunity. The project promised substantial pay, but would require Ethan to commit full-time and possibly relocate to the city. Ethan was torn. He wanted to help Jenna and her mother, but he knew that taking the job would mean distancing himself from the life they were building together. He broached the topic carefully with Jenna one evening, hoping she'd understand. "There's a job offer," he began, "one that could bring in enough to help with your mom's medical expenses and some of our other bills." Jenna looked at him, her expression cautious. "But it would mean leaving the farmhouse, wouldn't it?" Ethan nodded. "Maybe only temporarily, but it could make a real difference for us, Jenna." Jenna felt a pang of sadness at the thought of Ethan leaving. Though she wanted him to succeed, the idea of him stepping back into his old world, one filled with wealth, status, and family expectations, unnerved her. "Ethan, I appreciate that you're trying to help, but I don't want you to give up what we've built together." "Not like this," she whispered, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on them both. Ethan sighed, conflicted. He wanted to respect her wishes, but he also felt the pressing need to provide for her and Nancy. He decided to turn down the job, though the choice left him feeling uncertain and restless. Vivian, meanwhile, had been quietly observing their struggles. She saw Ethan's mounting frustration and Jenna's desperation to care for her mother, and she sensed an opportunity. Vivian believed that her son's life with Jenna was only temporary, and she hoped to hasten the inevitable by applying subtle pressure. One evening, she invited Ethan to dinner under the pretense of catching up. Over the meal, she broached the topic of the lucrative job he had turned down, reminding him of the financial stability it could bring. "Ethan, sometimes life requires us to make difficult decisions. This is one of them. You're too talented to be wasting away at that farmhouse," she said, her tone laced with feigned concern. Ethan's frustration bubbled over. "Mom, I'm not wasting my life. I chose this, and I chose Jenna." Vivian's expression softened. "I understand you love her, Ethan, but love alone doesn't solve everything. She needs more than your feelings. She needs security, stability. You can still have that life with her if you return to the city." Ethan left the dinner feeling conflicted, Vivian's words gnawing at him. He couldn't deny that their struggles were taking a toll on him, and the idea of a stable future was undeniably appealing. Back at the farmhouse, Jenna sensed the weight on Ethan's shoulders but struggled to bridge the growing distance between them. She feared that her mother's illness, their financial woes, and the constant strain of trying to build a life together were driving him away. Despite her love for him, she began to wonder if maybe she was standing in the way of his happiness. One evening, Jenna sat with her mother, who noticed her distress. "Jenna, don't let my situation take away your future," Nancy whispered. "You deserve happiness, and so does Ethan." Jenna knew her mother was right, but the thought of losing either her mother or her husband felt unbearable. Meanwhile, Ethan wrestled with his own doubts, torn between his commitment to Jenna and the life he'd left behind. In a moment of vulnerability, he told Jenna that maybe she would be better off without him. "I feel like I'm failing you, Jenna," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe you deserve someone who can give you the life you need." Jenna's heart broke at his words, but a part of her understood his struggle. With a heavy heart, she told him that she would support whatever decision he made, even if it meant leaving the farmhouse and pursuing his own path. She wanted him to be free to find his own happiness, even if it was without her. The days that followed were filled with silence and unspoken pain. Jenna poured herself into caring for her mother, while Ethan spent long hours working odd jobs, both of them avoiding the topic of their future. They were stuck in a holding pattern, each too afraid to confront the possibility of parting ways. Just when things seemed bleakest, an unexpected gesture came from their elderly neighbor, Mr. Harlan. Having observed their hardships from a distance, he decided to help in his own way. Mr. Harlan offered them a small loan, enough to cover some of Nancy's medical expenses, without interest and with no set repayment date. Jenna and Ethan were overwhelmed by his kindness, and it renewed their hope. They accepted the loan with gratitude, determined to honor Mr. Harlan's trust in them. His gesture reminded them of the strength they found in each other and the community that had quietly supported them. Buoyed by the kindness of Mr. Harlan's loan and a newfound sense of purpose, Jenna and Ethan reaffirmed their commitment to each other. They both realized that, despite their struggles, they couldn't imagine a life apart. The love they shared was worth every hardship, every sacrifice. Together, they made a promise to carry on, no matter how difficult the journey became. Ethan turned down his mother's offer to return to the city once and for all, making it clear that his place was with Jenna. With Mr. Harlan's loan, Jenna was able to secure her mother's surgery. The operation was grueling, and Jenna spent hours at the hospital, waiting anxiously for news. Ethan stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering reassurances. After a long, tense wait, the doctor finally emerged with good news. The surgery had been successful. Though Nancy would need time to recover, she was out of immediate danger. Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her, and she clung to Ethan, grateful for his support. In that moment, she knew that, no matter what they faced in the future, they could endure it together. When Nancy returned home, she brought with her a renewed appreciation for life, and she encouraged Jenna and Ethan to continue pursuing their dreams. She reminded them of the strength they had shown through adversity and how much they had already accomplished together. Nancy's recovery marked a turning point for the couple. They decided to invest more time and energy into building a life that reflected their values and dreams. Ethan began taking more local photography projects, determined to establish a name for himself in town. Jenna expanded her art business, partnering with a local gallery that agreed to feature her work. Each small success rekindled their hope, and the farmhouse, once a source of struggle, became a symbol of resilience and love. They were surrounded by people who believed in them and by the memories of the sacrifices they had made to reach this point. Vivian's final attempt to sway Ethan failed, and she slowly came to accept his choice. Though disappointed, she saw the love and dedication he shared with Jenna and began to respect their commitment to each other. Her occasional visits to the farmhouse became less strained, and while she never fully embraced their life, she grew to respect the strength of their bond. Vivian's acceptance, though partial, gave Jenna and Ethan a sense of peace. They felt a weight lift, knowing they could finally move forward without the constant shadow of disapproval. With Nancy's health stabilized and their relationship stronger than ever, Jenna and Ethan looked toward the future with optimism. They decided to officially turn the farmhouse into an art and photography studio, a place where they could both work on their passions and share their creative vision with the community. The farmhouse, once a symbol of struggle, now represented all they had overcome. They had turned it into a haven filled with love, dreams, and resilience, and their relationship had only grown stronger through the trials they had faced together. As Jenna invested more time and heart into her paintings, her reputation in the local arts scene grew steadily. Her work was often inspired by the humble beauty of the countryside, the aged trees, winding creeks, and golden fields surrounding their farmhouse. The community resonated with her pieces, appreciating her ability to capture the spirit of their small town with such care. One day, Jenna received a message from a regional art gallery interested in hosting her first solo exhibition. It was a rare opportunity that could bring much-needed financial support and validation of her talent. Jenna was overjoyed, but also anxious about balancing this new commitment with the ongoing demands at home. Ethan noticed her mixed feelings. One evening, as they sat on the farmhouse porch under a starlit sky, he encouraged her. "This is your chance, Jenna. You've worked so hard. You deserve to shine." She smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for his unwavering support. "I wouldn't have come this far without you, Ethan. This dream is as much yours as it is mine." Together, they began preparing for the exhibition, transforming their home into a studio filled with canvases, brushes, and paint-splattered aprons. Every piece Jenna completed felt like a step closer to fulfilling her lifelong dream. While Jenna poured her heart into preparing for her exhibition, Ethan also reached a turning point in his career. A well-known local magazine contacted him to feature a series of his photographs, showcasing the rugged beauty of their rural town. It was a project that aligned perfectly with his vision and values, and he was eager to prove his skills through a meaningful medium. As he captured images of the landscape, local faces, and daily life in the countryside, Ethan found himself rediscovering the simplicity and beauty that had first drawn him away from his family's world of wealth and privilege. With each photo, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and pride in the life he had chosen with Jenna. Their house became a bustling creative center, a space where they could express themselves and support each other's dreams. The walls were filled with their works in progress, Jenna's paintings and Ethan's photographs, a constant reminder of the life they were building together. The day of Jenna's exhibition arrived with a mix of excitement and nerves. The gallery was modest but charming, and the walls were lined with her paintings, each capturing a story, a feeling, or a memory. Local townsfolk, friends, and even visitors from nearby cities came to see her work, filling the room with warmth and admiration. As Jenna greeted guests and discussed her inspiration for each piece, she felt a newfound confidence. People connected with her art, seeing in it reflections of their own lives and struggles. She felt as though she was not just sharing her work, but a part of herself. Ethan stood by her side, beaming with pride as he watched her blossom. For a moment, all their struggles faded, replaced by a feeling of accomplishment and belonging. As the evening wound down, Jenna sold several paintings, earning enough to help them tackle their immediate expenses. She felt a surge of relief and pride, knowing that she was actively contributing to their future. That night, she and Ethan celebrated with quiet joy, embracing the fruits of their hard work. The success of Jenna's exhibition quickly made its way through the town and back to Vivian. The news of her son and daughter-in-law's accomplishments both surprised and unsettled her. Realizing that Ethan and Jenna's life in the farmhouse was more stable than she had anticipated, Vivian decided to pay them another unannounced visit, this time hoping to gain a clearer understanding of their world. When she arrived at the farmhouse, Ethan and Jenna greeted her with polite smiles, though the tension was undeniable. Vivian walked through the home, observing their humble yet cozy surroundings, the art-filled walls, and the warmth that seemed to emanate from each corner. As they sat down for tea, Vivian took a deep breath. "I've seen how hard you both are working," she admitted, her tone softer than usual. "And I can see that you're happy here." Ethan looked at his mother, a glimmer of surprise in his eyes. "We are, Mom. It's not always easy, but we chose this life, and we're proud of it." Vivian hesitated, her gaze drifting to one of Jenna's paintings on the wall. "I suppose I never understood what this life meant to you. Perhaps I've been too focused on what I thought was best, rather than what you needed." Jenna, sensing the sincerity in Vivian's voice, nodded. "We're building something here, Vivian. It may not look like what you envisioned, but it's ours." For the first time, Vivian seemed to genuinely consider Jenna's words. Though she still didn't fully accept their lifestyle, she left with a newfound respect for their resilience, and a tentative peace settled between them. With Jenna's exhibition success and Ethan's budding photography career, their lives finally felt stable. But just as they began to settle into this new phase, Ethan received an unexpected job offer from a prestigious photography firm in the city. The salary was substantial, the benefits promising, and it was an opportunity that could potentially secure their future. Ethan wrestled with the decision. He had worked so hard to make a life in the countryside, to build a career on his own terms. Yet, the lure of financial security and a clear path forward was tempting. He knew it would allow him to provide for Jenna and perhaps even expand her art business. One evening, he shared his dilemma with Jenna, his heart heavy. "I don't know what to do, Jenna. Part of me wants to stay here and keep building what we have, but the other part wonders if this opportunity could be the answer to all our worries." Jenna placed her hand on his. "Ethan, I love the life we've created here, and I believe in what we're building. But I want you to be fulfilled too. If you feel this is right for you, I'll support you." Ethan thought about her words, but ultimately, he knew where his heart lay. Despite the offer's appeal, he couldn't imagine returning to the city. His purpose had shifted. His dreams were tied to the life they had created together. In the end, he declined the offer, choosing the farmhouse, Jenna, and the life they had built. It was a decision that reaffirmed his commitment to their shared dream. As the weeks passed, Jenna and Ethan received an unexpected letter from their neighbor, Mr. Harlan, who had moved out of state to live with his daughter. In the letter, he expressed his deep admiration for their resilience and left them a small inheritance, a portion of his own savings and the deed to an acre of land adjacent to the farmhouse. The gift was overwhelming and came at a crucial moment. Jenna and Ethan knew it was more than just a financial boost. It was a testament to the impact they had made on those around them. With Mr. Harlan's gift, they could now finish the remaining repairs on the farmhouse and even consider expanding Jenna's art studio. They dedicated their next painting and photography projects to him, honoring his kindness and generosity. Just as Jenna and Ethan found a rhythm to their life, a phone call shattered their peace. Vivian had suffered a health scare and was in the hospital. Despite their rocky past, Ethan and Jenna rushed to her side, deeply concerned. At the hospital, they found Vivian in a weakened state, but with a look of relief upon seeing them. Her vulnerability softened her demeanor, and she reached out to Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been hard on you, Ethan, and on you, Jenna. I'm sorry. I was only trying to protect you, in my own way." Ethan held her hand, his heart heavy. "Mom, I know you wanted what was best, but I need you to trust that I've found happiness here, with Jenna." Vivian nodded, a hint of regret in her eyes. "I see that now, and I'm proud of you both." The experience marked a turning point in their relationship. Vivian's acceptance, though gradual, brought a sense of healing. As she recovered, she visited them at the farmhouse more frequently, slowly embracing their life and finding a new sense of peace in their happiness. With Vivian's gradual acceptance, Jenna and Ethan finally felt a sense of completeness in their life together. They decided to expand the farmhouse into a community space, where Jenna could teach art classes and Ethan could host photography workshops. The farmhouse transformed into a gathering place, a center of creativity and community spirit. Their love for each other and the life they had built radiated through their work, and they became beloved figures in the community. Ethan and Jenna's story of resilience, sacrifice, and unwavering love became an inspiration to others, a reminder that true happiness isn't found in wealth or status, but in the strength of one's convictions. One evening, as they strolled through the garden, Jenna and Ethan planted a young oak tree in honor of their journey. It was a symbol of their growth, their resilience, and their love. They stood together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, its golden light casting a warm glow over their home. Hand in hand, they knew that this was the life they had fought so hard to create, a life filled with love, purpose, and gratitude. The struggles they had faced only deepened their bond and taught them the true value of perseverance. Jenna leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, a contented smile on her face. "This is our home, our sanctuary, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." Ethan kissed her forehead, his heart brimming with love. "Neither would I. We built this together, and we'll keep building it no matter what comes." The farmhouse stood as a testament to their journey, a place where dreams, love, and resilience intertwined to create something beautiful and lasting. With Vivian's full acceptance and Mr. Harlan's generous gift, Jenna and Ethan set out to realize their shared dream, transforming the farmhouse into a community studio. The modest farmhouse, once a symbol of struggle, gradually became a beacon of creativity and connection. Ethan used the space to teach photography workshops, capturing the essence of the rural landscapes that had become so meaningful to him. He found joy in mentoring young photographers, sharing techniques, and encouraging them to capture the world through their own lenses. Jenna, meanwhile, set up a cozy art studio where she taught painting classes to locals of all ages. Her students found solace in their brushes and colors, guided by Jenna's patient, gentle approach. The farmhouse soon became known as the Fieldstone Studio, a gathering place for artists, dreamers, and families from around town. Jenna and Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment, seeing how their work impacted others and brought new life to their home. As Vivian became a more regular visitor at Fieldstone Studio, she also took steps to repair her relationship with Jenna. One afternoon, while helping prepare for an upcoming gallery event, she paused, watching Jenna with a soft expression. "Jenna, I owe you an apology," she said, her voice tender and sincere. "I spent so much time worrying about whether you were right for Ethan that I never took the time to see how much you truly cared for him. But you proved me wrong, and I'm grateful." Jenna, taken aback, smiled warmly. "Thank you, Vivian. That means a lot." Vivian reached over, placing a hand on Jenna's. "I can see that you've created something special here. You both have, and I want to be a part of it if you'll have me." Jenna nodded, feeling the last remnants of their past conflicts fade. In that moment, she knew that Vivian's change of heart was genuine, and the final wall between them came down. Their relationship slowly transformed, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Fieldstone Studio flourished with each passing season, drawing in more visitors and building a loyal following. Jenna and Ethan often hosted small art shows, seasonal fairs, and even community celebrations on their land. The townspeople became regulars, attending workshops, showcasing their own work, and supporting one another in the warm, rustic space. One particular event, a summer art fair celebrating local talent, became a beloved tradition. With booths showcasing everything from pottery to textiles to handmade jewelry, the fair became a celebration of creativity and community spirit. Jenna and Ethan reveled in watching their farmhouse transform into a hub of activity and joy, the once silent rooms now filled with laughter and inspiration. At the fair's closing, Jenna addressed the crowd with a heartfelt speech, her voice carrying a mix of humility and pride. "Thank you all for being here, for supporting us, and for making Fieldstone Studio a place for dreams. This home, this dream, none of it would have been possible without each of you." As the crowd applauded, Ethan took Jenna's hand, feeling a swell of gratitude for the life they had built together. They were no longer just husband and wife. They were partners in a shared vision that had brought hope to their community. Months later, Jenna and Ethan received joyous news that would mark a new chapter in their lives. They were expecting a child. The farmhouse, once a simple, aging structure, now felt alive with the anticipation of new life. Jenna imagined their child growing up surrounded by fields, friends, and the creativity that had brought them so much purpose and fulfillment. Ethan prepared a small, cozy nursery in a sunlit corner of the farmhouse, painting it with gentle colors and filling it with keepsakes and family mementos. Jenna contributed by creating a mural on one of the nursery walls, depicting fields of wildflowers under a radiant sunrise, a reflection of the new beginning they were about to embrace. Vivian, upon hearing the news, softened even more. She eagerly contributed to the preparations, embracing the role of a grandmother with open arms. Her initial doubts about Jenna and Ethan's life choices seemed distant now, replaced by a genuine love and excitement for their growing family. As Jenna neared her due date, she and Ethan arranged a small celebration at the farmhouse to honor Nancy, whose unwavering love and resilience had helped make all of this possible. Though she had initially struggled with her health, Nancy's condition had stabilized, and she was delighted to take part in the gathering. At the celebration, Jenna presented her mother with a framed painting she had worked on for months. A scene of a mother and child standing in a field, hands clasped and faces filled with joy. The painting, rich in color and detail, captured the bond they shared and the legacy of strength and compassion Nancy had passed on to her daughter. Nancy's eyes glistened with tears as she accepted the gift. "Thank you, Jenna. You've given me a beautiful life, and I'm so proud of everything you've created here." Jenna hugged her mother tightly, her heart full of gratitude. She knew that her mother's support had been the foundation of everything she had accomplished, and she was determined to carry Nancy's legacy forward with love and purpose. On a crisp autumn morning, their child was born, a healthy baby boy with bright, curious eyes and a calm, gentle demeanor. Ethan and Jenna named him William, after her father, and the farmhouse was filled with an overwhelming sense of peace and fulfillment. As they held their son for the first time, Jenna and Ethan felt their love deepen. They had built a life filled with joy, purpose, and resilience, and now they were blessed with a new generation to carry forward their dreams. Vivian and Nancy visited often, doting on their grandson and embracing the roles of proud grandmothers. Together, the family shared laughter, stories, and dreams, the once fractured relationships now strengthened by forgiveness and understanding. Several years later, the farmhouse and Fieldstone studio had become a fixture in the community. Each year, the summer art fair drew people from neighboring towns, and Jenna's paintings were now displayed in galleries beyond their small town. Ethan's photography was celebrated in publications across the region, and his workshops continued to inspire young photographers. In the spirit of gratitude, Jenna and Ethan hosted a final reunion, inviting everyone who had supported them through their journey. Old friends, neighbors, and family members gathered at Fieldstone Studio, filling the farmhouse with laughter, music, and joy. Mr. Harlan, though physically absent, was remembered fondly through a small plaque near the oak tree Jenna and Ethan had planted in his honor. His legacy lived on in the studio, and his gift had made their dream a reality. As the years passed, Jenna and Ethan watched their son, William, grow up with the freedom to explore his own passions. Surrounded by the beauty of nature, love, and art, he thrived, finding inspiration in the world his parents had built. One evening, as Jenna and Ethan sat together on the farmhouse porch, watching William chase fireflies across the field, they reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The challenges, sacrifices, and struggles felt like distant memories, transformed into stories of perseverance and love. Ethan wrapped his arm around Jenna, a gentle smile on his face. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Jenna leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart full of contentment. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't change a thing." They sat in comfortable silence, the farmhouse standing strong and beautiful behind them, a testament to the life they had chosen and the love that had carried them through. Years later, William, now grown, took on the stewardship of Fieldstone Studio. Inspired by his parents' dedication, he continued their work, welcoming new artists and dreamers to the farmhouse. Jenna and Ethan, though older, remained active in their community, their love a shining example to all who knew them. Their story, one of love, resilience, and the power of following one's dreams, had become a beloved legacy, woven into the fabric of the community they had nurtured. Fieldstone Studio stood as a reminder of the beauty that can arise from hardship, and as a place where all were welcome to create, grow, and find solace. And so, in the gentle heart of the countryside, surrounded by fields and friends, Jenna and Ethan lived out their days with the profound satisfaction of a life well lived, knowing that their love would continue to inspire generations to come. Forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Turn on notifications so you won't miss any future stories that celebrate love, community, and the strength we find in one another. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.